I want you to imagine, just for a second, the actual physical reality of the artificial intelligence revolution.
Yeah, it's a lot more than just software.
Right. When you think about AI, you probably picture a sleek chat interface, or maybe, you envision those vast, heavily air-conditioned server farms.
Mhm.
And of course, everyone is constantly talking about the silicon, those profoundly expensive graphics processing units that power the whole
The
operation.
GPUs, right?
Exactly. But there is a glaring question that rarely gets answered in the mainstream conversation. How do all of those thousands of separate glowing chips actually talk to each other without melting down or lagging?
Yeah, how do the literal mountains of data travel across a data center fast enough to give you a smart answer in the blink of an eye?
That is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we have a substantial stack of research reports, financial data, and competitive analysis from fiscal Q2 2026.
All focused on a single company.
Right, a company that has quietly positioned itself as the shadow architect behind this hardware. We are looking at Fabrinet, trading on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker FN.
It's a fascinating case study.
It really is. Our mission today is to explore how this company built a highly specialized engineering moat, how global supply chain shifts and a pivotal new alliance with Amazon are completely reshaping its future.
And of course, what vulnerabilities might be lurking just beneath the surface.
Okay, let's unpack this. Fabrinet is technically categorized as an electronic manufacturing services company, an EMS.
Technically, yes.
But calling them a standard EMS feels like looking at a Formula One car and calling it a commuter vehicle.
It is a completely inadequate label. I mean,
Yeah.
to really understand what Fabrinet does, you have to look at what they explicitly chose not to do.
Right, they went against the grain.
Entirely. The traditional EMS giants out there, the household names in contract manufacturing, they build their businesses on sheer volume.
Just pumping out units.
Exactly. They are assembling smartphones, laptops, standard consumer goods. It's a high-volume, low-mix strategy.
Because they're producing millions of identical, relatively simple units.
And so they rely entirely on economies of scale. But that model comes with a severe catch. The profit margins are notoriously razor-thin.
What kind of margins are we talking about?
We were talking about operating margins hovering around 4 to 5% on a good day.
Wow, that is tight.
It's incredibly tight. Fabrinet looked at that landscape and ran in the exact opposite direction. They adopted a low-volume, high-mix strategy.
Meaning they manufacture products in smaller quantities, but with a high degree of variation.
High variation and, crucially, extreme engineering complexity.
I want to pause on that phrase for a second. Extreme engineering complexity. Because it's easy to throw around terms like that, but what does it actually look like on the factory floor?
It's completely different from a standard floor.
We aren't just talking about robots snapping plastic chassis together.
Not at all. We were talking about building highly specialized optical communications components and industrial lasers.
Okay.
Manufacturing these optical parts requires environments that most standard electronics assemblers simply do not possess.
Like the clean rooms?
Right, they operate ISO Class 5 to Class 8 clean rooms. To put that in perspective, these rooms are meticulously filtered so that virtually no microscopic dust particles exist in the air.
Because a single speck of dust can...
Can completely ruin a laser's trajectory, yes. Furthermore, the manufacturing processes require sub-micron level tolerances.
Let's translate that for a second. A micron. How small are we actually talking here?
Well, think of a single strand of human hair.
Okay.
That hair is roughly 70 to 100 microns wide. Fabrinet's machinery is aligning optical components at a fraction of a single micron.
That is mind-boggling precision.
And they utilize something called 5-axis active alignment.
What does that mean exactly?
So instead of just placing a part down on a flat surface, their machines are adjusting lasers and sensors perfectly in three-dimensional space.
Up, down, left, right.
Forward, backward, plus adjusting the tilt and rotation. And they are doing this while the laser is actively firing to ensure the beam hits the exact right microscopic target.
Active alignment. Got it.
This level of precision is so difficult to maintain at scale that new competitors or even the tech giants designing the gear themselves cannot easily build a cost-effective production line to do it.
Wait, let me stop you there. If they are handling the absolute most sensitive bleeding-edge hardware designs for these massive tech companies, How do they avoid stepping on toes?
It's a huge trust issue.
Right, because if I'm a dominant chip designer, I would be terrified of my contract manufacturer stealing my blueprints to make their own cheaper knockoffs.
What's fascinating here is their never-compete philosophy. That is the exact fear they're addressing. Fabrinet operates as a pure foundry.
Meaning?
This means they never design, build, or sell their own competing products under their own brand. Ever.
So they don't have a Fabrinet-branded transceiver hitting the market.
Exactly. When you are dealing with advanced optical packaging, you are handling the crown jewels of these blue-chip tech giants' intellectual property. Fabrinet protects that IP fiercely.
How do they enforce that practically?
They physically segment their manufacturing floors. They dedicate specific engineers to specific clients, and they isolate the supply chains so that Client A's engineers never see what Client B is building.
Oh, wow. So it's siloed completely.
Yes. Because they refuse to create their own competing products, the designers trust them implicitly. This creates a formidable barrier to entry for any competing manufacturer trying to win away that business.
That makes a lot of sense. And they aren't just sitting around waiting for raw materials to arrive in boxes either. They have aggressively integrated their supply chain from the ground up.
They really have.
Fabrinet owns a company called K6 in China and another called Vitracom over in New Jersey.
Right.
So they are actually building the foundational customized optical materials from scratch. Things like spherical lenses, beam splitters, wave plates, and laser crystals.
By controlling the literal glass and crystals, they cut down on lead times and control the quality from the very beginning of the physics.
And that must help the bottom line.
And that vertical integration directly translates into their financial payoff because of the astronomical switching costs for a client to leave.
Oh, yeah. I can't imagine trying to move that operation.
Think about the logistical nightmare of trying to requalify a brand new factory to do sub-micron optical alignment without disrupting your global product launch.
It would be impossible.
Because of that, Fabrinet commands real pricing power. Remember those broad EMS competitors scraping by with 4% margins?
Yeah, high volume guys.
Fabrinet boasts gross margins of 12 to 12.4% and operating margins between 10 and 11%.
That's massive for manufacturing.
They are generating premium, highly defensible profits because they offer an engineering service that a typical assembly line simply cannot replicate.
Which brings us to the core reason we are talking about them today. The AI supercycle.
The big driver.
It is virtually impossible to talk about Fabrinet without talking about NVIDIA. In fiscal 2024, NVIDIA accounted for a staggering 35.1% of Fabrinet's total revenue.
Huge concentration.
Now, as of the recent fiscal 2025 data, that adjusted slightly to 27.6%, but the relationship is still foundational. Fabrinet is the primary manufacturer for NVIDIA's 800 gigabit optical modules.
But anyone following the tech space knows that 800G is already becoming old news.
Right.
It is moving at blinding speed, literally and figuratively. To train and run large language models, you need tens of thousands of processors working together simultaneously in a massive cluster.
And they have to talk to each other.
The bottleneck isn't just how fast one individual chip can think. It's the latency. How fast can data move between chip number 1 and chip number 10,000?
And traditional cables can't do it?
Traditional copper cables just cannot handle the bandwidth required anymore. They lose signal and generate too much heat. You have to use pulses of light.
Hence the optics.
That is why high-speed optical transceivers are non-negotiable for AI architecture. Fabrinet is currently navigating the industry's monumental transition from 800 gigabit speeds to 1.6 terabit technology.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Just to visualize, 1.6 terabits per second. That is the equivalent of downloading dozens of full-length, ultra-high-definition movies in a single second across a single cable.
It's an astronomical amount of data.
To achieve that speed, the architecture relies on 200 gigabit per lane node technology. That is an enormous leap in manufacturing complexity.
Yes, it is.
Yet, according to the sources, Fabrinet is already producing these 1.6T and 800G modules in high volumes using fully automated production lines.
They didn't just figure it out in a lab. They have fully qualified lines approved by their clients.
And their role goes beyond just the cables, right?
And their role expands significantly beyond just those pluggable transceivers, the cables you plug into a server rack. Fabrinet is embedded deep within NVIDIA's silicon photonics ecosystem.
Sitting right alongside major semiconductor foundries like TSMC.
Exactly. They are heavily involved in co-packaged optics, or CPO. Let me explain that briefly.
Please do.
Instead of taking an electronic signal from the processor, sending it across a motherboard, and then converting it to light at the edge of the server box, CPO integrates the optical transmission mechanisms directly onto the silicon processor chip itself.
So it's generating the light right at the source.
It is light generation happening right at the brain. This is the technology that will power NVIDIA's upcoming Spectrum-X and Quantum-X networking switches, slated for broad rollout in 2026.
So they are effectively removing the middleman in the data transfer process.
Exactly. Furthermore, they have deep ties to optical circuit switching, or OCS, which is heavily utilized in Google's custom TPU clusters.
TPU being tensor processing units.
Right. OCS allows the network to physically switch the paths of the light beams using microscopic mirrors, entirely bypassing the need to convert the light back into electricity just to route it to a different server.
That sounds like science fiction.
It reduces latency and dramatically improves energy efficiency. Fabrinet's expertise in this wafer-level hybrid integration puts them in an enviable position as these bleeding-edge technologies scale commercially.
It really reframes how you look at everyday software. When you sit at your laptop, type a complex question into an AI prompt and get a highly detailed answer generated in milliseconds, you are directly benefiting from Fabrinet's submicron precision.
They're making it physically possible.
Their manufacturing is what allows that data to traverse the server farm at the speed of light to fetch your answer. It is the hidden infrastructure of our daily lives.
Absolutely.
But to build this infrastructure, you need an operational base. While Fabrinet is legally incorporated in the Cayman Islands, the beating heart of their operation, along with over 16,000 employees, is located in Thailand.
Specifically, they operate out of sprawling campuses in Pinehurst and Chonburi.
Right.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this geographical footprint is a profound strategic advantage right now. We are currently observing global tech giants actively pursuing a China plus one strategy.
Because of the tariffs.
Businesses are navigating complex global supply chain dynamics, including ongoing U.S.-China tariffs. To mitigate these supply chain risks and potential trade costs, American hyperscalers and equipment designers are aggressively looking for manufacturing hubs outside of China and Taiwan.
And Thailand is stepping up.
Thailand presents a highly stable, highly capable alternative.
And the Thai government is making it incredibly lucrative for them to be there. The tax advantages granted to Fabrinet by Thailand's Board of Investment, or the BOI, are staggering when you look at the balance sheet.
They are very aggressive incentives.
Let's look at the specifics. Their manufacturing facility in Chonburi, known as Building 9, enjoys a 100% corporate income tax exemption, zero corporate tax until June 2026.
With the potential to extend all the way to 2031 based on certain export conditions.
Over at the Pinehurst campus, Building 6 enjoys a 50% tax cut until June 2025. On top of that, they receive import duty exemptions on machinery used for R&D, as well as on raw materials used for export manufacturing.
It adds up fast.
When you compare that to a standard 21% corporate tax rate in the U.S., or typical rates in Europe, the cash flow savings are transformative.
Those tax advantages flow directly to the bottom line, resulting in what financial analysts call a fortress balance sheet.
Meaning they have a lot of cash and no debt.
Fabrinet operates with absolutely zero debt. Their debt-to-equity ratio is a perfect 0.0.
Wow.
At the end of Q2 2026, they were sitting on $961 million in cash and short-term investments. This pristine financial health allows them to do something vital for their clients. They can expand ahead of demand.
So they build the factories before the clients even ask for them.
Right now, they are actively constructing Building 10 at the Chonburi campus. This is a mammoth undertaking that will add 2 million square feet of capacity to their portfolio.
2 million.
The first 250,000 square feet is expected to be operational by late June 2026. By building this capacity before the contracts strictly require it, Fabrinet guarantees the cloud providers that they will never be the physical bottleneck in the AI supply chain.
But building ahead of demand is great until nobody buys what you're building. Which brings us to how Fabrinet effectively guaranteed that demand.
The Amazon deal.
In 2025, they quietly pulled off a strategic move with Amazon Web Services that completely changed their trajectory. They announced a strategic alliance involving warrants.
This was huge news.
Specifically, Fabrinet issued roughly 382,000 warrants to an Amazon investment entity at a strike price of $208.48 per share.
Now, for anyone who doesn't spend their days reading finance textbooks, let's do a quick ELI 5 on warrants.
Think of a warrant like a VIP coupon. It gives Amazon the legal right to buy Fabrinet stock in the future at a locked-in price. in this case around $208.
Okay, so if the stock goes up,
So if Fabrinet stock shoots up to $300 or $400 a share, Amazon still gets to exercise their coupon and buy it at the $208 discount, instantly making a profit.
that's a nice perk for Amazon.
But here is the genius part of this specific deal. Fabrinet didn't just hand these VIT coupons over for free. The vesting structure is tightly controlled. Right, Amazon only gets to use these warrants based on the actual volume of manufacturing and services they purchase from Fabrinet.
Precisely. The equity reward is directly tied to future revenue generation. Amazon has to spend money to unlock the stock discount.
It essentially acts as a locked-in, long-term order book from the company with the largest cloud infrastructure footprint on the planet.
It's a brilliant win-win scenario across the board.
Let's look at the strategic benefits. First, as you mentioned, it secures long-term revenue visibility for Fabrinet's massive new facilities.
They know the orders are coming.
Second, it critically diversifies Fabrinet's revenue. We spent the first half of this discussion talking about how heavily they rely on NVIDIA. Bringing Amazon in at this scale aggressively addresses that concentration concern.
And third, it serves as a geopolitical hedge for Amazon.
Right.
AWS secures a robust cutting-edge supply chain in Thailand, insulating them from potential disruptions in other parts of Asia while avoiding those tariffs we mentioned earlier.
There is a minor short-term accounting impact, of course. Issuing those warrants creates a non-cash accounting adjustment that hits Fabrinet's earnings per share by about 7-12 cents in the near term.
It's a small price to pay.
However, Fabrinet's management is proactively using that fortress balance sheet we discussed to initiate share buybacks. By buying back their own stock, they offset the dilution for existing shareholders.
The long-term strategic value of embedding themselves as a primary manufacturer for AWS far outweighs a temporary paper adjustment.
So what does this all mean? We have spent a lot of time discussing the premium margins, the AI tailwinds driving demand for optical tech, the zero debt, and this brilliant Amazon lock-in.
That sounds perfect.
It sounds like an airtight business model.
Okay.
We have to look at the vulnerabilities. Every company has an Achilles heel, and for Fabrinet, despite the new Amazon alliance, customer concentration is still the glaring issue.
This raises an important question about their long-term market share. Yes, the Amazon deal is a step toward diversification, but look at the raw numbers from the latest reports.
NVIDIA and Cisco combined still account for a heavy chunk of their revenue.
With Cisco representing 18.2% recently. If either of those tech giants changes their hardware design cycles, decides to delay a product launch, or simply pulls back on capital expenditures, Fabrinet takes a direct, unavoidable hit to their bottom line.
And there's pressure from inside the ecosystem, too.
Furthermore, there is a very real risk of market share dilution within the NVIDIA ecosystem itself.
I'm glad you brought that up because NVIDIA, like any smart business, wants to diversify its own supply chain. It is dangerous to rely on a single manufacturer.
Absolutely.
A recent analysis from Barclays warned that NVIDIA is actively qualifying merchant vendors.
Right, the independent manufacturers.
These are independent manufacturers like InnoLight and Coherent, brought in to provide alternative optical modules. InnoLight is already a dominant force in the 400G space, and they are pushing hard into the 1.6T market.
And Coherent is a major laser supplier and a fierce competitor in the 800G arena.
The Barclays analysis suggests that Fabrinet's current 40 to 50% market share within NVIDIA's architecture could potentially dilute down to 20 to 30% over the next 2 years as these other vendors ramp up production.
That is a substantial threat to their growth trajectory, and it underscores exactly why that Amazon deal was an absolute necessity.
But the risks aren't just from competitors, they're also highly operational, right?
Yes, Fabrinet manages a profoundly complex supply chain involving thousands of raw materials and microchips. Interestingly, they do not rely on long-term supply agreements for their components.
Really?
Instead, they operate using standard purchase orders.
That seems risky.
When demand spikes suddenly, which happens constantly in the AI space, this can cause severe bottlenecks. We saw this exactly in Q2 of fiscal 2026.
The laser diode issue.
Yes, they ran into a severe supply chain constraint regarding specific laser diodes. They were relying on a sole source supplier for this crucial part.
And when demand shot up,
when that supplier couldn't keep up with a spike in demand, Fabrinet's production threatened to stall. They managed to survive the bottleneck by getting emergency approval from their client to qualify a second source for the lasers. But it highlights the tightrope they walk every single day.
if one microscopic component is delayed, the entire multi-million-dollar shipment halts.
Exactly.
And we cannot ignore the macroeconomic risks. specifically the currency fluctuations. This one is a bit counterintuitive.
Because of where they operate.
Fabrinet makes its money in US dollars because that is what their global clients pay them in. But its massive Thai operations, including the salaries of those 16,000 employees, the utilities to run the clean rooms, the facilities overhead, are all paid in Thai baht.
So they have a mismatch.
This currency mismatch creates a direct headwind when the Thai economy strengthens. Management explicitly noted that just a 1% appreciation of the baht against the US dollar hits their net income by roughly $2.5 million annually.
And we saw the real-world impact of that. In that same Q2 2026 report, the foreign exchange impact actually cost them 0.09 cents per share.
That translates to roughly $3 million wiped out just from currency exchange rates in a single quarter.
They are trying to counter this with operational efficiency and natural hedging where possible. But at the end of the day, global currency markets are completely outside of their control.
A strong Thai baht is ironically bad news for Fabrinet's profit margins.
It is a constant headwind to monitor.
Despite those headwinds, though, the financial results they're delivering right now are historic. Let's wrap up with what happened in fiscal Q2 2026. They completely shattered Wall Street expectations.
They had a phenomenal quarter.
They crossed the billion-dollar quarterly revenue mark for the first time, posting a record $1.13 billion. That is a 36% year-over-year growth rate.
But the real insight isn't just the raw revenue number. It's where that money is coming from.
Break it down for us.
Their telecom segment grew 59%, but their high-performance computing segment, which is essentially the AI hardware, the optical transceivers for data centers, jumped 61%.
It proves that they aren't just passively riding the coattails of the AI boom. Their growth is accelerating right alongside it.
Their non-GAAP earnings per share hit $3.36, comfortably beating the consensus estimates. It is the fastest annual growth rate the company has seen since they went public over 15 years ago.
It is a profound evolution. Fabrinet has transformed from a quiet electronics assembler into the indispensable foundry of the AI hardware revolution.
They really have.
They've successfully married incredibly high-complexity submicron engineering with a stable, heavily tax-advantaged manufacturing footprint in Thailand.
The AI supercycle fundamentally relies on data moving at the speed of light, and right now Fabrinet is the company paving the very roads that light travels on.
It is a commanding position today.
But it leaves you with something vital to consider about the future of technology.
What's that?
Fabrinet's entire economic moat. Their pricing power and their sticky client relationships are entirely built on the extreme physical difficulty of aligning lasers and glass at the submicron level.
Right. It's all about the physical limits of light.
But what happens if the foundational physics of AI data transfer eventually shifts? What if the tech industry discovers a radically new form of wireless data transfer, or harnesses quantum entanglement in a way that allows servers to communicate instantaneously?
Bypassing traditional physical optical cables entirely.
Exactly. If the need for hyper-precise physical glass and laser alignment disappears, would Fabrinet's highly specialized, heavily invested moat suddenly become a walled-in trap?
That would turn their biggest strength into their biggest liability.
It is the ultimate risk for any highly specialized foundry. The risk that the underlying technological paradigm shifts right beneath their feet.
That is a fascinating thought to leave on. The infrastructure of tomorrow is being built today, but the blueprints are always changing. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking closely at the companies quietly operating behind the scenes, and never stop questioning the invisible infrastructure hiding right behind your everyday tech. We'll catch you next time.